Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 320 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the silver bullet to deal with difficult team members. Now, you might hear me say quite a lot in this podcast, there's no silver bullet. Well, actually there is. So let's get into what it is right now. So as part of this episode, I'll also be helping you 10x your leadership. No, I really won't be doing that stuff because I hate that sort of thing. No, what I'm really going to be talking about is the silver bullet to solving the problems with difficult team members. And it's not as glamorous as what you might think, but the silver bullet is respect. Let me unpack this topic a little bit more because you might think that's a bit of a letdown. You go, wow, have respect for my team members. That's not a silver bullet. Actually, I think it is. The more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what? That's the one factor that I think is really going to make the difference in feeling more comfortable dealing with these issues with your team, if you have any, of course. So what happened, recently I'd spent a bit of time on Reddit reading about real leadership challenges people were facing, and many of the stories that I read on there are a bit like the Wild West, where leaders are thrown into roles with no formal training, they're left to sink or swim. And often what I found on Reddit was these leaders are asking the same question, things like, how do I deal with a difficult team member who's not performing, or someone who's causing conflict or taking too many sick days? And most of the time they're looking for a silver bullet, this perfect fix where someone's going to respond and say, do this exactly. But in reality, there's really no one-size-fits-all answer to these people problems. But I am going to offer a silver bullet, and it is respect. So in this episode, I'm going to share why leading with respect is one of the most effective ways to navigate difficult team situations and how to do it in a practical, thoughtful way. So why does it matter? Well, obviously there's hundreds of factors that impact every leadership situation. And I often like to think in terms of principles rather than specifics, because otherwise we can get stuck in a pattern of overanalyzing, which doesn't really help us. And over again, when I hear about different people problems, respect is the most useful principle that comes to mind. And one definition of respect is the acknowledgement and appreciation of another person's worth or value as a human being. So how does this principle work in practice? Well, if we look at how we might show somebody respect, we might follow a fair process, we might listen to their side of the story, and involve them in the decision-making about what to do next. So let's just step through these aspects one by one. The first one is following a fair process. So fairness is a super important part of dealing with any people problem, even with difficult team members. Because when people feel as if a situation is unfair, they're likely to feel demotivated and resentful. And being fair means you're following the same approach you would use with anyone else. You're not playing favorites or treating them poorly because of how they've behaved or performed. You're also giving them access to feedback and information that helps them improve, as well as support. And some of these resources might be things provided by an employee assistance program or something like that as well. And if the situation gets really serious, you're following the guidelines set by your HR people who hopefully have their eye on the legal side of the scenario as well. The second thing to think about here when you're showing respect is to listen to their side of the story. Now, one of the most important parts of dealing with any people problem is listening to what the other person has to say and trying to withhold judgment on it. So when there are issues, some managers resort to the my way or the highway directive approach without considering what might be going on for the other person. But listening and being curious about what's happening for the other person can build respect and credibility. After all, as the boss, you don't need to listen because you could just give orders. You have the authority to just tell people what to do. But that's why listening and paying attention is so much more powerful, because it shows you're not just going to rely on your formal authority to fix things. Respect means acknowledging that the other person has their own challenges and making an effort to recognize them as well. And the third part of this respectful process is involving difficult team members in decision making. Now, when you're trying to resolve some sort of behavior or performance issue, usually there's some sort of plan that comes out the other side. So this might include some actions that you or the other person is going to try to take to fix the problem. Now, often what does not work is coming up with all these actions by yourself as the leader. And when I say it doesn't work, I mean for the long term. In the short term, your solutions might be fine, but you're likely to get better buy-in and motivation from someone who has a say in how they're treated and how they are going to act going forward. Otherwise, it's simply another form of telling someone what to do. So instead, we should aim to involve the person in developing the plan to move forward, and the best way to do this is to simply get their opinion of what they could do to improve the situation. And of course, it's useful to input your own ideas here as well, but it's also important to get their thoughts on the table before you do, because otherwise they might just take your word and not really get involved at all. And this shows that you're willing to take input, and it's a two-way discussion. And there's a useful related article that you might like as well called Taking a Coaching Approach with Less Telling and More Asking. I'll put a link to that in the show notes page, thoughtfleader.com/podcast/320. And while we're at it, I'd like to remind you that you can always look more into working with me as well. If you think working with me one-on-one is a useful thing for your leadership, if you're having leadership challenges, or you'd like to just build a solid foundation for your leadership and feel more confident when you undertake your leadership role, then you can look into coaching with me. There will be a link to my coaching page on the show notes page. Lots of leaders who listen to this podcast actually do end up working with me. So if you're interested in that, please take a look and get in touch, and let's see how we can work together. All right. But one thing to remember as well with this respect topic is that respect must go both ways. You might have listened to everything up to this point and thought, well, hold on a minute. Why do I need to make it all about them? What about what I want to achieve? And you are absolutely right. Respect is no good if it's just one-sided. It has to go both ways. And usually when I find that people problems aren't being resolved, it's because respect is not being offered in both directions. So if you, the leader, are offering respect, then it must be returned by the other person. And this usually happens by acknowledging and taking ownership of their part of the problem, or respecting that the leader has performance targets and behavior standards that must be adhered to, and that getting paid to do a job means that a certain level of performance and accountability is required. So as a leader, you need to be respected too. Otherwise, you'll be bending over backwards to resolve issues when the other person is not coming to the party. And this won't work. So when you don't have the respect of the employee, you are more likely going to have to head down the road of formal performance management, which can be a challenging process, and it's often unpleasant. And remember also that if you're putting up with a difficult team member not respecting you, then you aren't actually respecting yourself either. And a bonus principle I want to talk about here is to focus on what you can control in these situations as well. It's worth remembering that you need to be focusing on what you can control when you're dealing with difficult team members. Many leaders get stuck on worrying about all the different what ifs or the possibilities. Well, you can't really control the what ifs and the possible things the other person might do. You can only really control what you do, what you say, and how you say it, and how you behave in emotionally charged situations. So do you keep your cool or do you get angry? The rest is up to the other person. So if you try to hold someone accountable, they might get angry. That is true. It's possible. But if you're fair, reasonable, listen and involve them in decisions, then you've done your part and the rest is up to them. So hopefully you can feel comfortable knowing that you've fulfilled your part of the bargain and you've done your best effort to try to resolve the situation. So hopefully this was an interesting podcast for you. The silver bullet thing is interesting. I honestly think that respect is the foundation for resolving these sort of issues, because otherwise you get this resentment that can build over time. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this one. thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/320 is the show notes page. Yeah, what's your thoughts on this respect as the silver bullet here? Is it a silver bullet? Is it not? Let me know your thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you think. And if you have 5 seconds, it would be great if you could leave a 5-star review on your podcast app of choice, if you like the podcast, that is, because it helps me get the word out about the Thoughtful Leader podcast and, get more ears on it and hopefully improve the quality of leadership worldwide, which will help many organizations. Thank you for listening once again. Keep up the thoughtful leadership as always, and I'll be back next week.